Ever wonder if a book's worth reading? If it's worth the money even buying it? Or if it's even worth all that hype? What about a TV show or a movie? You just can't trust the internet these days. I'm Katie, and I'm not afraid to spoil the books and the movies for you. Welcome to Spoiler Alert, and I'll spoil anything. Hey guys, welcome to the new episode of Spoiler Alert, episode 8, I believe. Today we are going to be talking about Hunted by Darcy Coates. Listen, guys, she's a very gifted author, but you are just not ready for this book. It had so many twists and so many turns, and it was so stressful because it was just like I had no idea what was going to happen. This book has been sitting on my to be read pile for like 2 years minimum, and I was still not ready for it. It was just mind-blowing, okay? Mind-blowing. Overall, on the Katie scale of great books, it gets a 10 out of a 10. It's a great mystery. It's so thrilling. It's really well written. You really don't know what's going to happen. A lot of the times, especially with people like me, I watch a lot of movies, I read a lot of books. A lot of the times, things can just be too predictable. Like, I just see the ending coming from a mile away, and to me, it just, there's no thrill if I can see the ending coming a mile away. So with this book, it literally had me on my seat the whole time. I finished it in like a day, 2 days tops, and I just highly recommend. Darcy Coates is, I believe, a Canadian author, so it's kind of hard to find her books here in the US. I listened to it on Audible. Really good. The reader of the book, who I'm just forgetting words today, the person who reads the book did a really well job though. It's really well written. This book starts off with a young woman by the name of Eileen. She is in the forest at night, and she is running for her life. She is hurt, and she is in the dark. She can't see, and something is following her. Something's been following her for hours, hunting her, and she doesn't know where she's going or what she's doing. Well, in kind of like a last-ditch effort, she reaches into her bag and she grabs a camera. As she's doing it, she falls and hurts her leg, but just kind of hoping beyond hope that she can use the flash on her camera to see. She starts taking pictures, and she can see that she is just being circled by something at least 7 feet tall, coming closer and closer, and she can't really see. She sees that the eyes are glowing. It's 7 feet tall, and it's just covered in dark hair, and she falls, and that's where the book ends, that first chapter. So really, immediately I'm like hooked. I'm like, what happened to Eileen? What's going on? And it picks up with this guy named Todd. I want to say his name's Todd. So this guy's really creepy, okay? So he lets the audience know that he is the kind of person that prefers to be inside, and he thinks he is above like everyone. His ego is just through the roof. It made it really hard to listen to the book when it was from his perspective, because his ego was just insane. He's like, they're so stupid. Like, I am so much smarter than these people. They don't know what they're talking about, blah, 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 blah. And what he's doing at the beginning of this book is he's stalking Eileen's Facebook page. She's been on vacation for 2 weeks, and it was supposed to be her last day. She was supposed to go on a hike, come back from her hike, post the pictures, and get some rest before she leaves for home the next day. Now, it's like 3 a.m., and there's been no update from Eileen. She left for her hike, and like, that's it. He hasn't heard from her. We, the reader, were like, she's in the forest, she's being hunted, oh my gosh. And he's just like, I don't know what's going on. And he tells the reader that he is best friends with Eileen's older brother, Chris. And Chris is super protective. He says it's unnecessarily protective of Eileen, which obviously is not unnecessary because he's a stalker. And like, you really get the feel that he's a stalker from the beginning. Anyway, so he texts Chris and he's like, hey, want to hang out tomorrow? Oh, wait, you have to pick up Eileen from the airport. Ha ha. How's she doing? And Chris is like, oh, we haven't heard from her today. And Todd's like, isn't that weird? Shouldn't you have heard from her by now? She's not stupid. Like, maybe something happened. Did she get hurt? And Chris is like, she's fine, dude. She's fine. We pick up the next morning, and no one is heard from Eileen. She still hasn't posted on Facebook. Todd's calling the cops. And they're not helping him because he's not a member of the family. He's not her boyfriend. He's not even really her friend. He's just this creepy dude that stalks her. The cops are like, yeah, whatever. Like, she'll be fine. So he goes to Chris's house where Chris and their other friends, Anna, Flint, and Haley, have gathered. And they're trying to figure out what happened to Eileen. The mom is freaking out. The dad is freaking out. And Anna's like, okay, we're going to remain calm. Chris, we're going to remain calm. And Chris is like, I don't want to remain calm. She's like, we're going to remain calm. I don't know why I'm doing this with my hands. Sorry. So she explains to them, she says, okay, call the cops, start a missing persons report. You two, speaking to Chris's parents, should go out to the city and where Eileen was staying to kind of put some pressure on the cops. And we here can create like a Facebook ad saying, hey, missing person, have you seen this person? And that's where we should go from here. That's the smart way to do things. We're not rushing into things. This is the smart way to handle things. Being smart about it, being rational. Okay, she is an adult. She's like 19. She's in college to be a high school teacher, I believe it was, middle school teacher, something, some sort of teacher. And, you know, she's an adult. Maybe she didn't want to come home, you know, like anything could happen. So she's like, let's be rational. And she's like the only rational one there. To be honest, I kind of like Anna, but I also kind of am just like, as the reader, I'm like, she's in trouble, Anna, get off your butt. You know, anyways, so to continue, Todd's like, whoa, she's not stupid and she knows what she's doing. So Todd, I really feel like his name's not Todd, but it starts with a T. Todd, maybe? He is really putting pressure on Chris, and Chris like snaps. He's like, it's none of your business. You're not her boyfriend. Leave her alone. And everyone's like, And Todd's like, fine. That's fine. And he just leaves the house. And he's like, I'm just going to leave for this city on my own and go find her myself. And like the whole time he's calling the cops, like, well, she posted a picture at a bar with some guy. That dude should totally be it. Like, just because she took a picture with a guy, Todd, does not mean that he's a villain. It just means that she thought he was cute. Like, just because she's not into you, it doesn't mean that the guy's automatically a sleazeball. Anyways, so he leaves for this town that they tell me the name, and I've forgotten the name, but it's at the base of the Cobb Mountains. Anyways, so he leaves on his own, and he tried to get the cops to help, and the cops are like, no. So what he does is he uses his own savings, and he's just like bar hopping, trying to find the right bar and trying to find the guy in this picture. Well, it's a tourist town. Like, people come from all over the world to hike at these mountains. The chances are that the dude was another tourist and that he's just gone and that he's wasting his time. Meanwhile, we meet a cop called Carol. We meet this cop. She's a lady cop. And you kind of get the feeling that, first of all, she's an alcoholic, so she's coming into work hungover like every day. And nothing against alcoholics, that's just her character. She's an alcoholic and she's coming into work hungover, which gives her little to no patience for anything. And she's being handed the Hirschberger case, Eileen Hirschberger. And she's like, ugh, she's probably just a lost hiker. It's fine. As a reader, you're like, it is not fine. It is not fine. Okay? Essentially, she kind of just gives everyone the brush off. And she's like, you know what, everything is going to be fine. She's probably just going to walk out of the mountains any day now. Well, come the 4th day of Eileen being missing, she's like, oh, I guess she's dead now. Sorry. Like, where was the effort? Where was the effort searching for this 19-year-old that went hiking and then never came home? Like, you waited 4 days. There's no way she survived for 4 days in the woods if she wasn't prepared. Like, if she only had enough water for a 1-day hike, and if she only had supplies to be hiking during the day, she probably got hypothermia and died. She got eaten by a bear. Like, you don't know. You don't know. This cop is just not doing her job. She's obviously kind of lost her faith in the job to begin with. She obviously, like, from the beginning, you're just like, oh, this lady's over it. She's over it. Meanwhile, Todd is in the mountains and he's hiking, and he decides that he's just gonna go off the trail. He's like, well, if she's on the trail, they would have found her by now, so I'm just gonna go off trail. No big deal. I'm smart. That's literally what he said. He's like, I'm smart. I'm intelligent. Mind over matter. I can do it. Spoiler alert. He can't do it. Okay. Long story short, Todd gets lost in the mountains. He gets hurt and something starts hunting him. A big hairy beast thing that's 7 feet tall and scratches mountains and it's just chasing him. In his efforts to escape this genius of a guy who he thinks he's so smart, he has lost all of his equipment. He'd taken off his clothes to dry them because he fell in a river, and when he sees the beast thing coming, he just runs. Leaves behind his water. He leaves behind his flashlight. he leaves behind everything except a jacket. All he has are his shoes and his jacket. And he's just wandering in the woods like that because he thinks that that's going to save him. It's not. On day 3, a hiker found Eileen's camera. It wasn't like a hiker, fisher. He hiked out into the woods to fish at a really secluded spot. And he was going to get shrimp. I think it was some sort of crawfish. And he found Eileen's camera, you know, the one she was using to try and see in the middle of the night, that took pictures of the thing that was coming at her. And he turns it into the cops, and the cops are like, oh, well, she's dead. So instead of being able, because the case isn't closed, they're just saying the case that she died, they're not able to give the camera to the Hirschberger parents. These are just like, here, we'll scan the pictures, we'll send them to you, and you can have the pictures of her last day. The Hirschberger parents send the pictures to Chris, and that's when he's like, all right, we're gonna go find her ourselves. So he and his friends are like, brilliant idea. Let's go out into the middle of the woods ourselves and go looking for Eileen. Because, you know, we have experience and have been to these mountains before. Chris and his friends get to this town and they don't tell their parents where they are. They come up with a bunch of lies. Oh, we're having sleepovers at so-and-so's house. I'm going to go on a vacation. I am going to be hanging out with so-and-so. So these 4 kids who are super smart. Well, they're not kids. They're in college, but like young college kids. So they're like early 20s. They're young. These 4 young people are like, we're going to go hike these mountains and find our lost friend. And as they're driving there, As they are driving, it's like a 10-hour drive from where Chris and his family and his friends live to where Eileen was. It's a 10-hour drive, which, I mean, it's not bad. I've done road trips before. 10 hours really isn't too bad. And as they're driving, Anna looks at the pictures and she's like, oh my gosh, what is this? And she sees the monster, the big hairy monster 7 feet tall. She sees it and she's like, Chris, it looks like she's being hunted by something. Flint's like, it's a Yeti. It's a Bigfoot. It's a Bigfoot. And Chris is like, well, don't tell the cops it's a Bigfoot, but we'll point it out when we get there. You know, maybe we can get them to take this more seriously, send out more search parties, try harder, search off the trails, because obviously in these pictures she's not on the trail. Like, maybe that's how it worked, right? So Chris and his friends get there and they go to talk to the cop whose name I can't remember. Carla. It was Carla. They go and talk to Carla and they're like, hey, look at these pictures. There's something hunting Eileen. Eileen's in trouble. And Carla's like, all right. She takes the originals, because it was a film camera, which you don't see very often, but it was a film camera. So she takes the original pictures and she takes the scanned in pictures and she looks at them side by side. And she goes, it looks like it's an anomaly from the scanner. Like, it doesn't, I don't think it's anything. And Chris is like, no, it's something. It's something. So Carla says that it's probably just an anomaly from the scanner or from the printer that was used to print the pictures, but that it's not in the original, so therefore it must not be there. Which is crazy, because while film is a really good way to develop pictures, it's not perfect. Things can get lost. So I just think that's bogus. The team gets mad. The group of 4, they're angry. They're like, no, there's something there. Obviously Eileen's not okay. Like, you should be putting in more effort. So they call Haley's dad, who is like this rich dude who kind of just throws money around and gives it to Haley whenever she asks. And they get $1,000 from him, and they go and just buy a whole truckload of equipment, like professional grade equipment. A really good, like, top of the line first aid kit, 4 different maps, compasses. They get string to tie to trees. Like, they're prepared. And then by process of elimination, they're able to decide on one trail. You see some of Eileen's pictures from earlier in the day before she was hunted. There are pictures of her swimming in some sort of like pond pool thing along her hiking trail. So they're like, okay, there's this many trails. There's like 3 trails that go by a body of water. There's 2, one hard one intermediate, and 1 beginner. And they're like, well, she really isn't an expert. She really isn't a beginner. She may have gone through the intermediate, but she's been really trying to push herself lately, farther and better than she ever has. So we bet you she is on the expert level trail. So through that process of elimination, they're like, okay, she is on this singular trail. It's the only expert level trail that passes by a body of water. And they take off down that trail, all 4 of them, you know, because now that is 5 people that are inexperienced hiking in the woods looking for Eileen, 3 experienced search teams will work for the cops looking for Eileen, 1 singular cop working from her office trying to figure out where Eileen is, somewhere up in here, I guess. She's not out there. And then Zero parents that know where all these young adults are. Zero parents. Not a single one. Not even Haley's parents, who are like basically paying for this entire journey, know where they are. Okay. So the night of night 4, you know, Todd runs off. Here's day 5. Day 5 is the day that Chris and Anna and Flint and Haley take off on this expert level trail. As they're on there, like, oh, hey, look, here's this like offshoot of the trail that leads to the body of water. So like the main trail isn't on the body of water, but there's like an offshoot, and it is a trail. It's just a smaller one. When they get to the body of water, they're like, oh, this is the exact body of water from Eileen's pictures. So they take a few minutes to kind of catch their breaths, to relax, and then they're like, okay, think, where did she go from here? Like the rest of her pictures are just trees. Where did she go from here? That's when they spot another trail. It's like off to the side. It's an old trail, and it's closed off for being too dangerous. And they're like, bet she went down here. And as they're going, there's a couple of times where they're able to see that Eileen was here, you know, like, okay, this matches up with her picture. This one kind of, I bet you this is where she went. Like they're able to kind of follow her footsteps a little bit, but at one point the trail breaks off, and no matter which way they follow the trail, they can't find any sign of Eileen anywhere. So they're just kind of walking back and forth trying to figure out where she is. They're like, we've gotten this far, but this is it. There's no other sign of Eileen. Where did she go? Eventually it's starting to get dark and they have to make camp. So they do. They make camp. Meanwhile, Todd, I'm still not certain that's his name. Todd, he's got no water. He's obviously gonna like die of dehydration at this point. He's delirious. So Todd's lost. He can't find any water. Eventually he stumbles upon a river again. He's able to drink some water, and he's like, okay, I'm feeling better. I should go and sleep in a tree. I'm gonna sleep in a tree. So he uses his shoelaces and his jacket to tie himself to some branches in the tree, because he's like, he figures that whatever is hunting him is a monster, like some sort of animal, and that it's not going to think to look up to hunt him, right? Wrong. In the middle of the night, well, not even in the middle of the night, it's not that long. He's sitting there in the branches. He hears something down below, and he like twitches, and he falls off the branches. The shoelaces and the jacket don't hold him to the branches, and he falls. And that's where we lose track of Todd. Chris becomes really frustrated with his friends. He's really having a hard time with, he's not able to do enough, and he feels like he's out of control. So he kind of goes off on his own after having snapped at Anna and Flint, but not Haley. And while Anna's kind of talking to him, giving him some different insights on his friends, they hear screaming coming from the campsite. Turns out there were fire ants, and they bit Flint all over, like head to toe. They cover him in like calamine lotion and antiseptic lotion, and everyone goes to bed. Luckily, they do not have to deal with the monster, because as we know, the monster is busy hunting Todd. Todd. And when they wake up in the morning, Flint's like, I can keep going. It's all good. Don't you worry about it, my friend. And Chris is like, well, cool. If you're able to keep going, let's keep going. Meanwhile, I did forget to let you know that Anna has been tying string to trees and leaving a trail behind them, like a literal trail, like a whole line for them to follow back, like not tying it and cutting it off, like no, like just unwinding it as she goes. She's ends up getting through like 3 whole bottles of twine. They tried different tactics for tracking Eileen, and they eventually are able to find some notebook paper that they follow as they're following that they follow because they think it's Eileen because she took her sketchbook with her. And that's, they come across Todd's dead body. Yeah, it's pretty gross. They're like, all right, this is where we gotta call it quits. We have got to take him home. So they sleep, and in the morning they make like a makeshift stretcher out of some branches and some of their extra jackets, and they start following the string back. As they are following the string back, Haley's like, does this look familiar to you guys? Because this does not look familiar to me. Why are we not going through this one area that we went through when we were laying the string to begin with, you know? And as the reader, you're like, someone's been messing with the string. Is the monster smart enough to mess with the string? The monster's not smart enough to mess with the string. And Anna, who's rewinding the string as she goes, she's like taking it down from the trees and winding it back up. She's like, nothing, everything's fine. She goes to take the string off of this one branch, and as she does so, she hears a noise. She looks up, and a knife falls from the tree and impales her and gets an artery. Everyone's freaking out. They're like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. They tie her up, they put pressure on her, and they're like, this is not good. This is not good. Okay, so they're like, all right, we gotta leave Todd. We need to worry about Anna. They put pressure on her, and they're like, all right, we gotta get her out of here. So they make a different stretcher for her out of a sleeping bag and some branches, and they start following the string. But this time they're not touching the string because they're thinking that the dude, the monster, laid traps on the string is what they're thinking. So they're following the string, but they're not touching it. They're like following it from a couple feet away. And they're carrying Anna, who is not doing well. Eventually that night they're like, hey, we've got to stop. We've got to find water. Flint, like, he's done. He sits down and he is out cold. He is exhausted. And Anna's like, I need water. I need water. So Haley and Chris leave Flint, and they're like, hey, we're gonna go and get some water. And he's like, yeah, and he kind of waves them off, and those two go off to find water. They're able to find water just grand. Now, while all of this is happening, Carla is like, you know what, I wonder about these pictures. She scans them in herself from an entirely different scanner, and she takes up photo editing software and just changes the contrast like to the extreme, where like the trees are almost white and you're able to clearly see the monster in these pictures. She's like, oh no. So she goes to the station the next morning, she goes to the station. It's like super early in the morning, and while she is at the station, she is like waiting for her commander. As she's doing this, she starts talking to the guy sitting next to her, and she finds out that he ended up taking some missing person cases as well, also lost in the forest. And she's like, your missing person cases plus my missing person cases puts us over the national average for missing person cases in any national park. That's not good. So we skip back to Chris and Haley, who find water. When they come back, Flint's not by the stretcher. he had gotten, they don't know this, but he had gotten dazed and thought he was following Chris when really the monster was luring him away, and he fell off of kind of a drop off, not a cliff, but it was a drop off. He fell and he hurt himself. When Chris and Haley find him, he has cracked open his head and he is bleeding really bad and he's hurt himself. They bring him back to camp. They give him water. They're like, okay, now we've got 2 injured people, 2 dead friends, and there's only 2 of us, Chris and Haley. And there's no way that Chris and Haley alone can carry Anna and Flint. And there's no way that Chris and Haley can carry Anna. Like, Haley's a small girl. She's more like a runner. She's not like ripped like Flint is. So she's like, I'll run. She's like, I'm going to follow the string. I'll run back to civilization. It'll take me 8 hours tops. And then I can send back help. And Chris is like, I don't like it. And she's like, I'm doing it anyways. And she kind of kisses Flint on the forehead. He is still super out of it. And she takes off running, following the string. Eventually, though, as she's following the string, she sees the string, instead of being like at a normal level, it dips down to like the ground. And she's like, I know Anna did not do that. So she knows that Anna didn't dip the rope all the way down to the ground. And then all of a sudden the rope is like 8 feet up in the air, way above their heads. And she's like, Anna couldn't even reach that. And she's like, that's when she clicks. Someone's been messing with their rope. Like, we already knew that because she mentioned, hey, this isn't where the rope went before, but she forgot with Anna being, you know, stabbed. So she's like, this is not good. I am probably going in completely the wrong direction. What do I do? So she turns around and starts following the string back the other way, which is fine until she finds it cut. So the monster's been following her and it cut the string so that way she couldn't follow it back. And she's like running all over close to it, trying to find where the other half is. Can't find it because it's gone, because whatever this monster is taking the string off the trees. And in my mind, she keeps calling it a monster, but in my mind, I'm like, what kind of monster or animal has the thought process to do that, to like not only follow you but then wait until you find your dead friend, grab your string, and like completely mislead you in the opposite direction, like the wrong direction, in a way that's convincing, put a trap on that string, and then follow you and cut the string so you can't make your way back to your friends. What kind of monster does that? But she keeps calling it a monster, and I'm like, this is not a monster. Okay, lady, at this point, you got to accept that it looks like a monster, but that is a person. That is 100% a person. So she says she sees the monster, and it's got glowing green eyes. And in like my mind, I'm like, it's got to be like night vision goggles. Those things are green, right? I mean, I've never had any, but like TV, you know, they're green. I was like, that's got to be night vision goggles. And she points her flashlight at it and it runs away. And I'm like, it was night vision goggles because that hurt its eyes. Bet. So Haley's like, well, I'm just going to take off in the opposite direction now. She bolts. She just completely leaves the monster in the dust. Meanwhile, Flint wakes up and he's like, where's Haley? Chris is like, she went to get help. She went to get help. I stayed behind so I could keep you and Anna safe, but she ran ahead because that was the only thing to do. Flint's like, all right. In the meantime, Officer Carla, she is running around frantic, asking everyone, have you worked any missing person cases? How many have you worked? Did they get lost in the forest? And like total in the last like 5 years, there are 40 missing person cases in the forest. That is way above the national average for missing people in a national park. That's not normal. That's not a normal amount of people to ever go missing in a place. Ever. 40. But because it was such a toxic workplace, like her chief is a jerk, and because it's such a toxic workplace, none of them talk to each other. Like, they just focus on getting through their day. So she's like, we haven't been communicating. There's a serial killer. She's like, I don't believe in this monster, but there's a serial killer. So she goes up into their extremely disorganized records room. Like, there's no form of organization. Like, they're just shoving crap wherever it will fit. And I'm sorry, like, how is that effective? It's not. Like, now she has to dig through all of this crap to try and find all these missing persons. There could be hundreds. There could be thousands, and she'll never know because she's... So as she's waiting for her commander, she finds like 60 of these missing person cases. And she's like, this is so not good. This is bad. So bad. So she goes to her commander's office while she's waiting for him. And she tells the receptionist, she's like, you need to call him back. You need to call him back right the frick now. Like, there's a serial killer. I'm sorry, I'm getting worked up, but there's a serial killer, okay? This is why we communicate, people. I'm a bookworm telling people to communicate. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Anyways, so she goes into the commander's office, and there's a big, huge map of the national park and like their city up on the mountains. So she starts taking pins and just sticking them where all of these people have gone missing. She finds a pattern. They're all going missing off like the expert trails. Not the easy ones, but like the expert trails. She's like, this is so bad. Her commander comes in, he's like, this better freaking be good. I was with the mayor. And she's like, well, there's a serial killer. Look. So she first tells him about the pictures, and he's like, it's a joke. It's gotta be a prank. Like, these kids think it's some sort of Bigfoot nonsense. Now we're gonna end up on some Bigfoot documentary. Would you shut up? Like, this is not a big deal. And she goes, that's what I thought. But I found a pattern. And she tells him about these 60 other cases that they've got. And he's like, we're starting a task force. We are starting a task force with you in it. And we are going to capture this bad guy. We're calling it a profiler, like the whole 9 yards. Sounds pretty good. But is it? So she talks to her friend, and her friend's like, hey, you should probably call that Chris guy and tell him that the photos did some good and that you're still working on it. Like, you don't have to tell him what's going on because the commander wants to keep it all under wraps. He's like, we're the town that let a serial killer run loose for 10 years because we just can't get our crap together. Right? So the friend's like, just call him. You don't have to say what's going on, but just tell him that you're still working on it. So she tries, and she finds out. So she doesn't have Chris's number, but she has the Hirschberger parents' number. So she calls the Hirschberger parents, and they're like, we haven't seen Chris. He's at a friend's house. And Carla's like, oh no. Meanwhile, it is now daytime. So now with the friends, we're on the same day as Carla. Carla's on the same, we're on day 6. Day 6, okay? Carla figures out that Chris is in the forest on day 6. And Haley is separated from the group on day 6, okay? I should like make like a timeline at the bottom. Anyways, so on day 6, Haley's like, I have no idea to know where I am. And then she remembers she has a map and a compass. But like landmarkers, there are people out there that are like, oh, well, we can just figure it out. Like, look, I don't know. I'm not super outdoorsy, but she's like, I need a landmarker to know where I am on this map. And then I can use the compass and the map and figure out where to go from here, right? So she climbs up a tree and she sees a big, huge mountain. She's like, okay, that's the biggest mountain, right? Mount Aberdeen? something like that. It's got a name. And she's like, okay, that's where it is. It's this way. She's using her compass on her map. She's like, okay. She gets down and she's using her compass on her map, and she's like running southeast is like the quickest way to the nearest town. So she's just like booking it. Meanwhile, daytime, the friends are not doing so good. Chris asks Flint, he's like, hey, can you stand? And Flint's like giving him this murderous glare. Okay, Flint's like, screw you. Flint's obviously, he's dehydrated, he's not feeling good. He's got a crack on the back of his skull. Like, this poor Flint. Okay, poor Flint. He just kind of, it just did not turn out well. He didn't even want to be there. Anyways, so Flint's like, hey, stop breathing. It's been a while. Couldn't have told me sooner. So I understand. Chris is freaking out, but Flint in his mind, he's like, it's all your fault. And somehow in his mind, where he's dehydrated, he's got a concussion, he's got a broken skull, he works out in his mind that he thinks it's all Chris's fault. That it was Chris's fault that Eileen went missing, that it was Chris's fault that Todd, that's what I'm calling him, Todd went missing. That it's Chris's fault, that he thinks that Chris killed Haley. He thinks that all of it's Chris's fault. Chris is just like, my sister's dead. Two of my friends are dead. One of them's missing. This one looks like he wants to kill me. Not a good day. You know? So he catches on that Flint is like angry at him. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna keep my distance, buddy. Love you. But we're just gonna, you stay over there. I'll stay over here. And I'll just make sure you stay alive. Cool. Meanwhile, I'm at the station. Carla tears into the office and she's like, Commander. I think it's a commander. Is it a chief? Anyway, she's like, listen, the boss dude. She's like, boss dude. Hey, listen, Chris Hirschberg and his friends went into the forest, and now we gotta send out a helicopter to go find them. And he's like, okay, we'll do that, but we think we know who the serial killer is. Someone called and he said that, oh, his neighbor so-and-so was walking down the road with a bag and he was limping. And when they asked what the dude was doing, he goes, hunting. Except there's nothing to hunt in the Cow Mountains. Like, there's nothing big enough for them to hunt. Squirrels, maybe. But like, it's not really a place you go hunting. It's not that kind of a forest. Like, it doesn't have any big game. Anyway, definitely not big enough for this big huge sack the guy had. It definitely didn't have anything big enough to fill that. Unless he hunted a lot of really small game. Anyways, so they're like, we got him. Several people said that they saw the same thing. This dude with a gross bag walking out of the forest. Let's go get him. Carla's like, cool. And they go to get him. And as they get into the building, Carla sees him. She's like, freeze, freeze, you know? And the guy blows his head up, blows his brains out. Yeah. Carla's like, they found a list on his counter of all of the missing people, including Eileen. And then in the backyard, they find a costume, like a big costume. It's got like wood mask and it's got like a bunch of hairy tassels, so like in the dark it's gonna look like hair, but it's not. And then like these big huge thick shoes. Only thing that's running in Carla's mind is that he's a little dude. The dude that was the serial killer is a little dude, and the claw marks on the trees and the pictures indicate that this monster serial killer is at least 7 feet tall. And this little dude, even with the big, huge shoes on, still not gonna make it up to 7 feet tall, and he's still not gonna fill out the costume. But like, the chief's like, hey, good job. Case closed. Want to transfer? And Carla, she's like, yeah, it's kind of ruined it for me. I want to transfer. She goes home. But she's kind of turning this over in her head. She's like, it just doesn't sit right with her, you know? It just doesn't sit right. It doesn't make sense. Meanwhile, Haley runs up on this cabin. It's like a hunting cabin in the middle of the woods. This hunting cabin has no water, no electricity. There's probably someone out there who goes hunting all the time, and they're telling me that I'm stupid. Of course it doesn't have water and electricity, and I'm sorry. Okay? I don't hunt. It's not that I'm against it, it's just that I've never been. Okay? I wouldn't know. Maybe hunting cabins do have water and electricity, but this one in the book does not. And it has a mask with night vision goggles, because I called it. And it has these big, huge blades. She says they're like the size of a man's forearm. And they have like leather straps so that it can strap to the end of a man's arm. So like the really big claws, right? And she's like, oh, I'm gonna get rid of these claws, because she's clever, right? She's like, we're not doing this anymore. I am not going to be the victim anymore. She takes those claws and she hides them out in the woods. Meanwhile, there's helicopters searching for Chris Hertzberger and his friends, and they're like flying over, and Chris is like, hey, we're down here. Crap, they can't see us because the trees are too thick. And as he's like paying attention to the helicopter, Flint like lunges with a knife and tries to attack Chris, because remember, he's convinced himself Chris is a serial killer. It's all Chris's fault. That's what he's convinced himself by now. We the reader know that it's not true, but that's what Flint's convinced himself. So like, as the reader, you're just like, oh, who's the serial killer? Because there's no way it was that little guy. What is happening? There's only an hour left of the book. Stick with me. Carla gets a phone, well, she places a phone call to a cop who years before, like 10 years ago, like the very first case, had worked on the case. She places a call to him, and he tells her that the chief at the time really wanted to rush and close the case. So they didn't investigate the claw marks, and they closed the case as the dude's dead. And she's like, click. All we know is that she runs to the office of the chief, looks at the big map, and then she claims she knows exactly where every body is. What's going on? Don't understand. She goes to the receptionist and she's like, you're gonna have to bypass the chief right now. What you need to do is you need to send the helicopter to these exact coordinates. And that's where the kids are. I'm telling you right now. What? Right? That doesn't make any sense. And then she takes off. Meanwhile, Haley. Now remember, Haley found this weird hunting cabin. Maybe it's average, I don't know. This hunting cabin, it's very bare bones. She found it in the middle of the woods. All of a sudden, she calls it a motorbike. In my mind, I'm thinking like an ATV, four-wheeler, you know? That's what I'm thinking. She says it pulls up, and so she climbs into the sink, you know, and hides. There's like a whole bunch of chemicals down there and scrub brushes, and she's hiding. She's like, crap. I didn't get out of here fast enough. And she says a big man over 6 feet tall comes in. He's in his 40s. And he says, where are you, little mouse? Little mouse, excuse you. Apparently, she had borrowed one of his lanterns and she lit it. And when she blew it out, and he went to go light it for himself, he knew it was hot, and so he knew that someone had been in his cabin, which is clever. Okay, I wouldn't have put two and two together. I'd have just been like, oh, weird. I would have kept living. So the guy's like, you can come out and fight me now, I can kill you. Okay, wow, yeah, great options, man. He goes to like the closet where those claws were, and it's empty, and he's like, those are expensive, I hope you didn't damage them. She's like, nope, didn't damage those, just hiding. So he checks under her bed, nothing there. He's like, okay, there's only one other place you could be. He turns around, he goes straight towards the sink where she's hiding. He opens the cabinet door, and she throws bleach in his face, and she gets it all over one side of his face, which is probably gonna blind him. But as she's going, she takes her knife, and she's like, all right, I gotta get out of here. She takes a knife and tries to cut him, and she just barely nicks him on the neck, not deep enough to do any damage. He takes a meat cleaver and he like cleaves her leg. Bad. Okay, like deep, where she can't walk anymore, and she's trying to get away. She's crawling away, and he goes, you know what, I'm gonna let you live. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna kill you, I don't like disposing of bodies anyways. I'll find you eventually though, because you're probably gonna bleed out. Have fun. And then he goes back inside. So she crawls out of the cabin. She goes, idea. There was a bike. So she goes to the bike, and when she gets there, the very intelligent man left his keys in his bike. Which, I get it. He, at the time when he was parking his bike, he thought that he was alone and that he wasn't gonna have to worry about anyone stealing it. But like me, automatically, I'm always taking my keys. It's like people like in the country, they don't lock their doors, and I'm like, I lock my doors. I take my keys with me. Call me crazy. But she hops on his bike and drives away. Meanwhile, Carla, she has gotten herself enough supplies to be careful. And she's like, all right, I think I know what trail they're on. This trail. And she goes down the trail, and she goes, there's a body of water that way. So she goes down that side trail, and she finds the same body of water that Eileen was at in her pictures. And she's like, okay. But instead of going off that little weird trail that the friends went down, she goes past the water, and like there's like a little drop off. And when she's down there, she finds Eileen alive. So if Eileen had fallen and gotten hurt, but close enough to a body of water where she was able to drink water, and she was able to hide under some rocks. So she was near a body of water, and she had shelter. Really, those are like, you can go for days without food. So if you have water, it's fine. She's super malnourished, but she's fine. Okay? Now, we're back to Chris. Chris is like, what the frick, Flint? And he and Flint end up wrestling. And Flint's trying to kill Chris because he thinks in his delusional mind that Chris is the bad guy. And Chris is like, I don't care if we're friends after this, but you can't kill me. So he reaches up behind Flint's head, and he finds the break in Flint's skull, and he just like digs his finger into it. And Flint's like, ah! And Chris kicks him away. And he just backs away. He's like, you can't kill me. I don't care if we're friends, but you can't kill me. Now there's a helicopter up there. They're looking for us. So I'm gonna go find a place with less trees, and I'll bring the helicopter back here because I'm a good person. I will be back. And Eli just leaves. And eventually he goes out, he finds the river where they got water, and he sits on a rock in the middle of the river. And he sees the helicopter coming. And the helicopter, he starts waving his arms, and the helicopter flashes its lights at him, and it's like, yeah, we see ya. We're coming. So in your mind, like, this is great. Who's the serial killer? At this point, we know it's not a monster. Who's the serial killer? Someone tell me this. Seems like a happy ending. We meet up with Carla. in her captain's house. She says there's a little black package between her and the seat cushion on a couch. And he's like, what are you doing here? She was like, oh, well, you weren't answering the door, so I broke in through your window. Well, I broke in. It was open, so I just came in. He's like, why? She's like, well, it's important. He's like, you could have radioed me. She's like, I didn't want to tell you over the phone. I'm like, is it him? Is it the chief? Who's the serial killer? I need to know, right? What we learn is that the killing started right after he transferred into the city. And really, he doesn't really kill them. He just scares them off the trail and gets them into situations where they're gonna die. Carla figured it out because when she talked to that retired cop, and he's like, yeah, the chief really just wanted us to close the case. And she's like, he didn't want me to take this case. So she goes into his office and looks at his map. And she notices a ton of pinholes on it. And in addition to these pinholes, Carla, this genius of a woman, sees little tiny notes in red pen, barely legible on the map, with the initials of every person that's gone missing. Even like the missing search party, like one of the 3 search parties went missing. All of the initials on that map. It comes to like over 60 victims. And she's like, he was trying to convince her it was a prank at the beginning because he knew. When he realized she had enough evidence to prove otherwise, he wanted to keep it under wraps until he had enough evidence and until he wrapped up the case. Really, he was framing the guy that blew his own head off. And he's like, this guy is like covered his tracks immensely. He apparently has motion sensors all over the forest, like in large numbers. And the reason why is because he just wanted to see if he could kill him. That's the answer. I just wanted to see if I could kill him. Grand. Thanks for that. And he's like, there's 2 options here, Carla. I have people in high places. No one's going to convict me for this. Okay? So we have 2 options here. 1, I kill you. She's like, I veto that option. He goes, 2, you just stay silent. I'll transfer you someplace else with a pay raise. Or you can retire early, but... She's like... And he's like, just let it go. You're capable of compartmentalizing. You can live with this. It's fine. I didn't actually kill these people. They just died. They just died. With my help. God. It was like Ted Bundy saying, oh, I didn't really kill her. She just... died. You're still a killer. You're still a murderer. So Carla's like, here's the thing. And he goes, also, I'm going to need you to give me your recorder before you leave. She's like, what? And he's like, well, you have circumstantial evidence at best. So I figured you came here to get a confession from me and you were recording it. And she's like, huh. She's like, looks like you really overestimated my intelligence. Pulls out a gun and shoots him in between the eyes. And she's like, realistically, she's like, there's probably no way to really, there's no such thing as a perfect crime. There's no way to completely keep her DNA or anything, a hair follicle, a scrap of cloth. There's no way to completely keep evidence out of the building. What she does do, though, because she shot him with his own gun that she found under his pillow, so she makes it look like it was suicide. And then she just leaves. Now she tells the friend Haley, the only one who saw the murderer, she goes, this is what happened. If you want to turn me in, I accept that. I'm a murderer. She goes, if not, I accept that. She goes, I thought that this was the best way, that to help you guys so everyone had closure, and to also help the town, because the town wouldn't be able to recover from not only having a serial killer, because that leaves an impact on a town to have a serial killer in it, but to have their chief of police as said serial killer operating for 10 years. She said, I figured it was helping the town. He kept the workplace toxic on purpose so that nobody was communicating. He purposefully spread out the missing person cases to keep himself from being caught. Haley loses a leg. Anna's dead. Eileen lives. Flint lives. Flint and Chris become friends again. They can't find all of Todd's body, just pieces. Yeah. It's, I was really mind blown. I honestly, for the first part of this book, because I've read books from this author before. She writes horror novels. So she's written stuff with ghosts. So I was like, it's not out of this author's reach to write a novel about some sort of like murderous Bigfoot, you know? So I was like, it could be about a monster, but that would be kind of hokey. So like this whole time I'm like, is it a monster? Until the string started changing and I was like, this is a person. There's no way this is a monster. And then it wasn't a monster. And then I was like, who's the freaking serial killer? Because it's not the old guy. Who's the serial killer? Tell me who the serial killer is, Darcy Coates. Tell me. And it was the freaking police chief the whole time. I didn't see that coming. Like, I guess maybe you did while I was telling you, because I did not do this book justice, okay? You have got to read this book. I did not do it justice. It is very well put together. 10 out of 10. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Spoiler Alert. I know I talk a lot. I know I stutter. Sorry. But I hope you enjoyed this episode of Spoiler Alert. If you did, make sure to like and also subscribe, because I'm going to read another book this week, and I'm going to talk about it again next week, or I can do a movie or a TV show. Leave comments down below on what you guys want to hear me talk about. If it's a book that you're just not sure if you want to read, or a movie that you're just not sure if you want to watch, leave it below in the comments. I will watch it, I will read it, and I'll come back to you guys and I will spoil it for you. I am not worried. Please make sure you subscribe, and please, please, please share this with your friends and other people who you think would enjoy this episode of Spoiler Alert. You guys have a great weekend, stay safe, and tune in next week for Spoiler Alert.